The February 22nd, 2017 hearing of the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining. We're here for the briefing session. Mr. Baza, we'll turn the time over to you.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is John Baza. I'm the director of the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, and this is the time we've set for a briefing of the board of division issues. You're going to get a good dose of mining today because the first item on the list is an annual report by Kennecott, Utah Copper, who is going to talk about some of the reclamation work they've done. This is a condition of the board contract that Kennecott has, and they come before the board every year and provide this report. So here with me today, seated to my right, is Trevor Heaton. He is a representative of Kennecott, and I'll just turn the time over to Trevor, and he can introduce himself and move forward with his presentation.
Thank you, Chairman.
Welcome.
Thank you, members of the board, for the opportunity. So I've got a presentation here. What this presentation is, this is our annual presentation that we give to the board. Right on. Thank you. This is our annual presentation that's part of our 1978 contract. The agenda today for this presentation, we'll talk about the purpose of the presentation. We'll talk about our reclamation activities during the year of 2016 and how we performed against our contract obligations. And then we'll discuss some of the activities that we have planned for 2017. Oftentimes people ask us why we're here and why we're doing this. This is part of our 1978 reclamation contract that governs the 0002 permit, which is what governs the Bingham Canyon mine. According to this contract, we have agreed to provide to the board and division annually a detailed report of reclamation work. So discuss reclamation activities that we've done in the previous year. In addition, we have an obligation that we will expend a minimum average of $50,1978 in the application of best available technologies towards rehabilitation of the land. And so part of the purpose of this presentation is to report on how we performed against that obligation. And then, in addition, we discuss what our reclamation plan is for this forthcoming year, what we plan to do this coming year. And so basically this presentation is part of our obligation associated with our 1978 reclamation contract, and it's an ability to give the board an update of our activities and how we're performing against our contract obligations with the board. The 0002 permit, this is a map of several of the mining permits that are owned and operated by Kennecott or Rio Tinto operations. The permit that we are concerned with is the permit outlined in red. You can see there's a lot of overlap, and it's there's a lot of permits that coincide one with another, but the permit that we are concerned with is specifically the 0002 permit, which is the one outlined in red. To give you some context here, number one, this is the Bingham Canyon mine. Excuse me. To the north is to the right. We have the Great Salt Lake. We have the tailings facility up here, bordered on the west by the Ochre Mountains. Significant activities in 2016 include we salvaged 120 acres. We salvaged topsoil from 120 acres, and that included about 5.7 million cubic yards of topsoil that was stockpiled in association with some mining-related activities that are ongoing. Associated with these mining-related activities, we relocated and constructed new groundwater cutoff walls. We'll discuss here shortly what exactly that means. We've installed a number of stormwater basins that we've constructed or enhanced to exceed our regulatory obligations. We have constructed a tow drain along the base of what will be our waste rock surface, and we've installed a number of pipelines. Along with these activities, we have we have commenced and continued waste rock placement that will allow us to reclaim the face of a lot of these east-facing dumps that people can see from the valley. We've continued construction of the lower benches of this relaxed slope area, and associated with that, we've placed approximately 89 million tons of material there. And in addition, we've continued construction of a large reclamation activity on the south benches, which addresses some of our historic stormwater concerns that we've had in that area, and we'll talk more about that project as well. So soil salvage along our east waste rock projects. You can see in the upper right corner a map showing the 120 acres. This area in red is the 120 acres, the area over which we have stockpiled and salvaged soil in preparation for mining activities that are taking place in the area. We've stockpiled, like I said, 5.7 million cubic yards of growth media, and we've placed a temporary seed mix on our stockpiles and throughout the area for weed control. Down here you can see some of the construction activity that's taken place, salvaging that stockpile, salvaging the soil to the right. You can see a large stockpile. These stockpiles are huge. They're like mountains out there. A large amount of stockpile. I know when we throw around numbers like 5.7 million cubic yards, it's hard to visually see what that is, but when you're out there, it's amazing how much soil has been stockpiled. So this is a map of our east waste rock areas. These are the waste rock repositories where that people can see across the valley. You can see the historic dumps up here, these kind of oxide colored dumps. In order to reclaim these dumps, we have to relax the slope. And the most economical way to relax this slope is to place waste rock in front of the historic dumps to allow us to construct these dumps in a manner that we can have a slope that is gentle enough to allow us to cap the area with a topsoil growth media mix. So in order to do that, we would have to expand the toe of these dumps out, and you can see this line represents the extent of the waste rock expansion to provide for that relaxed slope. These areas were stripped. The topsoil was removed from these areas in preparation for this activity in 2015. In 2016, we removed the topsoil from these areas here. And then this topsoil removal process was placed in very large stockpile areas, strategically placed along the east side of the dumps to allow us for reclamation. This line here represents what's called the tow drain. It is it's a tow drain that we've installed in preparation for placement of our new waste rock areas. It will allow us for better capture of some of our stormwater that might come in contact with the waste rock surface. In addition, we have several cutoff walls that are placed in each of the drainages along the east side of these dumps. These cutoff walls are concrete walls that extend down to bedrock that essentially capture meteoric surface and subsurface flow coming through those drainages. Installed with these cutoff walls, you'll see these lines placed here. These are pipelines that convey water that is captured by these concrete cutoff walls. It conveys the water to a large pipeline, and this pipeline conveys that water north to appropriate holding facilities where it's handled appropriately. This picture shows the magnitude of the project. Now, I know last year several of the board members had the opportunity to visit the project. You can see it's a very large area. As you look out here, you can barely see the excavators and the trucks in the distance. You can see another excavator here, and you can see the amount of material that was stripped, that the topsoil was removed in preparation for these activities. This picture shows the top of one of our stockpiles. Essentially, everything that you can see in this photo, with the exception of the far distant mountains, is the top of this stockpile. You can see one of our surveyors up there helping us get a quantify the amount of soil that we had stockpiled, but they're just very large areas. When you're on top of a soil stockpile, you don't realize you're on a stockpile. You think you're on part of the mountain, but they're just a tremendous amount of material that was stockpiled. These areas here, you can see, again, represent the expanse of the work, the extent of the work that was undertaken. You can see the equipment operating throughout these pictures. They look like insects out there. It was a lot of movement, a lot of heavy equipment that were moving. One of the things we found is that, so this photo here shows us hauling topsoil up the mountain to a topsoil location that was strategically placed up on top of the mountain. We found that the placement of our topsoil stockpiles could save us millions of dollars in reclamation costs later on. That if we could place the stockpiles higher, it provided quite a bit of savings to our reclamation costs when we would begin using these topsoil stockpiles. Some of our stormwater activities included cutoff wall relocation. We had to move several of our existing cutoff walls to new locations to allow us for placement of the waste rock benches. You can see in the bottom right is a construction photo from one of the cutoff walls that's being constructed. You can see one of the new cutoff walls in the Copper 4 area that is under construction. Down on the left, you can see one of our stormwater basins that was installed. So some of our stormwater activities include cutoff wall relocation, stormwater basin construction. We'll discuss the tow drain construction and some of our other activities. Here's another photo of one of our cutoff walls installed. Again, you can see the magnitude of the project, but the cutoff wall basically extends across the drainage to capture all surface and subsurface flow. Here's some photos of some of the final basins that were constructed. By regulation, we're required to maintain our stormwater basins either to a 10-year 24-hour storm or to a 25-year 24-hour storm, depending on when the basins were constructed. Most of these basins were constructed to hold upwards of a 200-year 24-hour storm event. These pictures illustrate the construction of the tow drain. Along the base of where the waste rock was to be placed, we installed 2 sets of perforated pipe encapsulated by a non-reactive rock. This was then wrapped in a geofabric and provided basically a basic tow drain construction that allows us to capture meteoric flow that would come in contact with the waste rock dumps and provides conveyance of this waters to appropriate holding facilities. Along the east waste rock areas and the south dump waste rock areas, we've begun construction of our relaxed face that will allow us to reclaim some of these areas. You can see down up above is a before picture, and then down below you can see where waste rock has been placed to begin constructing that relaxed shelf. This base that will allow us to relax this slope to an angle of repose that will allow us to reclaim these and place topsoil and vegetation on these slopes. The East Waste Rock project location, this shows you a view across the valley. The East Waste Rock is located here. You can see on this map where it's located, and again, this map down below, you can see an up close view. As we place this material, we've placed approximately 89 million tons of material in 2016. We've begun constructing these lower lifts that will allow us to relax this slope for reclamation of these dumps. The South Dumps project is similar, but there are some differences. The South Dumps project is located here at the south end of the valley. Many of these dumps, the drainages associated with these dumps report into Butterfield Creek, the Butterfield Creek drainage. And historically, we've had some stormwater concerns where we've had many of our basins that were built to regulatory standards just weren't sufficient to hold rainwater, as we've had some extremely large storm events come through the area. Like I said, our basins by regulation are designed to withstand a 25-year, 24-hour event. In September 13 of 2013, we had upwards of a 500-year storm event in this area. And our existing stormwater structures were not sufficient to handle the event. You may have had, so we had off-site release of material, and it impacted some property owners, some farm fields and property owners in Harriman. Associated with this event, you may have had some folks talk to the board about what's going on. This project is in direct response to that. This project is to mitigate those releases and to mitigate the risk of a release in the future. So the purpose of this project is to construct a waste rock shelf at the base of these dumps. One of the main issues that we found is that the dumps had issues with debris flow. As the stormwater systems would become overwhelmed, we'd have mine-impacted sediments that would get washed out by the rainwater. This project essentially places a shelf at the base of 4 of these drainages. This shelf would mitigate the risk of debris flow in the future. In addition, we'd enhance stormwater control in the basins downstream of this project. That there would be a number of stormwater basins that would be placed or enhanced or newly constructed associated with this project. The bench that would be placed at the base of these drainages, at the base of this waste rock area, would be relaxed to a slope of 2.5 to 1, and this would allow placement and reclamation of this lower slope. And then we build a place of vegetated soil cover on top of that. And this is, like I said, this is in direct response to mitigate some of the concerns and some of the risks that we've had in the past associated with this area. And as we do this, we're confident that we'll see some very positive results from the construction of this shelf, the vegetated cover on the relaxed slopes, and the enhanced stormwater controls that are in these 4 drainages. So construction of the shelf, you can see material that has been placed so far in the first 3 drainages, first 3 of the 4 drainages. The top of this bench is sloped towards the waste dumps to provide additional stormwater control on top of the bench. So the design is that the stormwater would flow towards the waste dumps instead of pouring over the side. And then, like I said, in addition, we've installed stormwater detention basins at the base of these dumps of this newly constructed shelf. In 2016, with all of these projects combined, we have spent approximately, Rio Tinto Kennecott has spent approximately $64 million in BAT and experimentation. That includes this work associated with the East Waste Rock projects, the South Dumps projects, stormwater basin construction, and preparation for these reclamation activities. Compared to $1978, this would amount to about $17.4 million in $1978, and thus our obligation to spend $50,000 in $1978 has been met. In 2017, we expect to do the following activities. We expect to construct additional stormwater controls along the South Dumps. We expect to continue construction of the shelf at the base of the South Dumps. We begin to start shaping some of the waste rock that we have placed along these so that it meets angle, so that we shape it from an angle of repose as it's placed by the mine to more of a reclaimed surface in some of these drainages. And then we'd continue construction of the waste rock base along the face of the East Dumps. And there may be additional reclamation activities and studies that are taking place as warranted and as funding allows. Any questions?
Question, board members. I just did a rough calculation. You would meet your 50,000 goal in less than a third of one day. So it's about, that works out to, on a 365-year basis, about 175,000 a day. So you have been busy. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments and this good report. Back to you, Mr. Baza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are ready now to give you a legislative update. To do that, Mr. James Owen, who is currently serving as our legislative liaison, will come forward. I know that he's emailed a briefing report to you as of yesterday, but he's here to provide you with a verbal report. And then at the conclusion of Mr. Owen's discussion, I'd like to make a few comments.
Proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm James Owen. I'm the division's legislative liaison. It's my privilege to be providing you with another legislative update for the 2017 session. We are currently on day 31, which means we have only 14 days left until the session ends. Division isn't currently running any bills, but there are two bills that relate to oil and gas regulation that we've been closely tracking. The first of those bills is SB 189. This bill was initiated by the oil and gas industry, and the Utah Petroleum Association is its primary proponent. I don't see Lee here, but last night, after I'd already sent you the update, the legislative update, I got some additional information from the UPA regarding this bill. Cities and counties have expressed some concerns about the bill and how it will impact them. And so after discussions with the cities and counties, the UPA and the bill sponsor have decided to pull the bill back from consideration for this year. They intend to spend the summer working on bill language and collaborating with the counties and the cities. The UPA has stated that the bill is important and its purposes are still valid. And so it intends to work with the cities and counties to pursue a similar bill in the future. So we'll watch and see what happens with that. Currently, it's still listed on the reading calendar for the Senate, but I expect that it will be pulled soon. The other oil and gas bill is Senate Bill 191. This bill was initiated by the board, so it's likely that the board is very familiar with this bill. In a general sense, the chairman has stated that this bill is meant to allow landowners to know the rules of the game before they play. More specifically, this bill allows the board to make an oil and gas and drilling unit retroactive to the date of first production of an existing well located within a drilling unit, even if the retroactive date predates the board's order establishing the unit, if no party to the board's proceedings objects. These orders will be binding on owners who receive proper notice, and the bill also increases the range of the share of production for well pulling orders, and also modifies slightly the consenting owner and non-consenting owner definitions to allow for inclusions of the time frame and manner as established by the board. So as of yesterday, this bill is number 39 on the Senate's reading calendar, and after that it will be moved to the House and go through the House Natural Resources, Environmental, and Agriculture Standing Committee. There are three energy-related bills that we're tracking. All three of these are still in process, and the bill file has not posted to show language. They are the Assessment Area Energy Upgrade Amendment bill from Senator Van Tassel, and then the Energy Development Amendments from Adams and Energy Amendments from Hinkins. And these are all Senate bills, but again, we haven't seen the language, so we'll see how it plays out and report whether or not those have any impacts. We are also watching a number of joint resolutions. All three of the ones that we're watching closely are from the House. They're concurrent resolutions. we've already briefly discussed House Concurrent Resolution 11, and that is the resolution to rescind Bears Ears, and that was signed by the governor. House Concurrent Resolution 12 is similar. This one calls for a decrease in the size of the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and the language is requesting that that be decreased to the minimum area necessary. This bill also calls for Garfield and King counties to work with the BLM to generate a map to define what they would consider minimum area. And this bill also passed both houses and was signed by the governor. The other concurrent resolution we're watching is HCR 1, and this is the resolution that the state is using, or legislators are using, to help the state to obtain control of public lands within the state, and they're using legal concepts of the equal footing doctrine to push that. This bill, or this resolution, is going to be read in House standing. I believe it was being read this morning in House standing, and so we'll see what happens. Again, all three of these are resolutions. They're message bills. They're the state attempting to tell the federal government what the state's interests are. The last bill that I wanted to update you on is House Bill 11. This is the bill that changes the way that boards such as the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining interact in terms of their political party affiliation. This bill removed the requirement for a certain number of board members to be of a political party. After this bill passed the House, it went to the Senate, and it was amended in the Senate to include additional language. And that language is that the governor and the Senate may not consider to seek or discover the political affiliation of a person when considering that person for appointment. So not only is there no political party affiliation, but they also can't do research to find out what your party association is. So those are the bills that I wanted to highlight. The next update that I'll provide in March will be a legislative wrap-up and a summary, because at that point the legislative session will have ended. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Back to you, Mr. Baza.
I'd point out to you that James is doing a great job for us in terms of tracking bills, being up on the Hill, interacting with parties, and we really appreciate his help and assistance since Steve Schneider retired in December. So hopefully James is enjoying himself. So we'll see if it appeals to him on a more permanent basis. But what I wanted to mention to you as part of the legislative activities going on that James tracks, we also have appropriations meetings that have been held regularly throughout the session. And those appropriations meetings come in two parts. The first part is during the first couple of weeks of the session, the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environmental Quality Subcommittee, Appropriations Subcommittee, reviews all of the agency's base budgets and defines what that base budget is going to be for the coming year. So the base budget for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining was unaffected from last year. It was presented, proposed, and voted upon. So we basically ended up with a base budget, and that bill has already been approved and enrolled, that was the same as last year. However, the second phase of the appropriations process involves building blocks. Now, the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining did not have any specific requests for additional funding this year. But as part of that, there are quite a few legislative requests that come from individual legislators. And they had a whole laundry list of things that they wanted to look at and fund. And as part of that, they kind of scouted all the agencies and looked for potential efficiencies or cost savings or reductions that individual agencies could take that would fund some of those legislative requests. So in our case, we were identified as having some additional dollars in travel which frankly we've already identified as a cost savings because of the reduction in oil and gas revenues. But as part of the recommendation of the subcommittee to executive appropriations, we were hit with a $63,500 cost reduction of general funds. And so right now, that's in place. I don't think the final voting has taken place on that. And in our case, we probably fared better than a lot of other agencies because our reduction was just a one-time. Some of the agencies, even in natural resources, received ongoing reductions. So I think the jury's still out on that. There's still some debate and discussion going on. But right now, it has been one of the recommendations of the subcommittee that we would incur a cost reduction. And those are general funds. So even though it's identified to come out of our travel budgets, it really affects any general fund activity we have in the agency, which includes administration, board, and our minerals program predominantly. So I just thought I'd mention that to you. I know Paulin Dupin's on, my financial manager is here, and if you have any specific questions on how that process works, I'm sure she'd be happy to come up and answer those questions.
Board members, any questions?
I guess I'm curious as to how that was identified as an area where you have apparent excess of funds. How do they anticipate for you to do your job? I mean, the inspectors have to go to the sites.
Yes, you ask a very good question. And unfortunately, I think when legislative fiscal analyst or anyone from the outside looks at our travel costs in the division, they don't distinguish between the costs we have to travel to do our work in the state versus out-of-state travel. It's all kind of rolled into one. So the legislative fiscal analyst just said, look, you reduced your travel, which was our out-of-state travel, by this much last year. We think that's a cost savings. But as we explained to the legislature both last year and during our building block presentation, that was a cost savings we already took. That's how we ended up balancing our budget, was by reducing our expenses down to a level that met our income. So it seems like it's just a deadly spiral to say, okay, now that you've saved that money, we're going to take it out of a line item in your budget, which means that, frankly, we have to look at other areas of cost savings in order to achieve that $63,000 of cost reduction. So it's, yeah, you've got a very good question. I think the logic of it is a bit confused, and we would certainly argue against it, but in our case and other agencies' cases, I don't think they asked our opinion.
Anyone else have a question? At one time, the fiscal analyst had recommended that you reduce your oil and gas program from 25 employees down to 10 or equivalent of that. Is that correct?
I don't know that that was ever the case. He did recognize that our income stream was well over $1 million short of what our appropriation was. So I think at first he was saying, well, you obviously don't have enough money to pay all these people. But the thing that we did in that case was we already reduced our expenditures by leaving positions open and vacancies in the oil and gas program. So it wasn't really a reduction in staffing that he was recommending, although he didn't phrase it that way. It was just that those were vacancies we've already taken. So we aren't, he isn't digging any deeper. It's just that he wanted to make sure that we're not trying to rehire for those positions at this point.
Would it be fair to say that you're penalized for the cuts you took because they took them a second time?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
So, lesson learned?
Indeed.
And then people wonder why government appropriations process is so difficult. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Certainly.
that.
The next item on our agenda, which I think we're probably going to conclude with, will be Dana Dean is the Associate Director over our mining programs within the mining group. And you heard a year in review from John Rogers last month. Well, Dana is going to provide that for the 3 mining programs that she oversees, which includes the coal regulatory program, the minerals regulatory program, and the abandoned mines program. So I'll just turn the time over to Dana now.
Good morning, Chairman, Mr. Chair, and members of the board.
Welcome.
Thank you. I realized as I was putting this together that 3 separate updates by the program managers probably would have gotten you better information, but I realize that your time is valuable and we don't have time every board hearing to talk about what we do. So I'll try to give a fair update of what's gone on this year in the mining programs. Like John mentioned, there are 3 programs. There's the Abandoned Mines Reclamation Program, the Coal Regulatory Program, and the Minerals Regulatory Program. And I'll give a brief discussion of each, starting in alphabetical order. The Abandoned Mine Reclamation Program accomplished quite a bit last year. Over 100 mine openings or dangerous mine openings were closed. 1 in Emery County, that was a coal project, 30 in Juab County, and 70 in Tooele County. That's what we call that, the Farnsworth Project, which is suspended for the winter, and we plan to do some more work there and wrap that up as soon as we can in the spring. You may be familiar with the Honorine mine. That's part of this project. It's a little bit of a controversial part, but the landowner did some work on it, and we're trying to negotiate with him if he'll give us an adequate plan stamped by a PE. We said we would pay for the closure, even though he had done some things to make the opening worse than it was. But it's a very well-known opening. People go in and out all the time. We don't want someone getting hurt there, so that's why we're working with him to get that closed. There was also some coal pile cleanups. One was just off the, just right around where that power plant is in the mouth of the canyon as you're coming down from Spanish Fork towards the Price area. There were 12,000 tons of coal removed and taken to the Sunnyside Cogen project, and over 9,000 cubic yards of clean soil was imported. That project also got wintered out. It's almost done. Here's a picture. You can see the coal. I don't have an, oh, there's an arrow. You can see the coal in the bank here. And this is a before picture. This is a picture just before we got wintered out. You can see that the coal's been removed, the slopes better, and we're using topsoil to make it more amenable to things growing there and not causing problems in the future. Another project was, this is where the one hole was closed, the Upper Huntington project. So it was a combination of closing this hole that you can see here that's led to some dangerous circumstances in an underground mine, and then there was some coal cleanup. You can see the coal in the aspens here, and that was cleaned up and backfilled with some other material. The coal regulatory program has been very busy. You may hear other states saying that they're not so busy and things are down. We completed 359 permitting actions last year. 92% of those were on time, and 325 inspections. Some of the bigger things that we worked on, the Skyline Flat Canyon tract, which we finally were able to finish just a couple weeks ago. We signed a permit and sent it out. It is now waiting for federal mine plan approval. We're hoping that that will go smoothly and they will be able to mine in there at the time that they need to. That's a huge addition to their mine. If they don't get it on time, it would basically shut the mine down. You can't have a longwall just sitting and waiting a year for OSM to approve things. So we're hoping that that is in OSM's hands. We're hoping that that gets approved quickly. and we expect it to get approved on time. The Alton mine, we've approved 2 new expansions. It's called the North Lease. It came in as a big project. We ended up splitting it into 3 areas. 2 of those are approved, and they now can mine there. The third one we're working on now. The thing that has held up that third area is a core permit for some drainages that will be affected there. So as soon as they get a core permit, we're working simultaneously, and we're hoping to be able to get that done there. They've also done a lot of Phase 1 bond releases. They've done a lot of reclamation. They are turning their bond over, so they'll get, once they get Phase 1 bond release, they can get up to 60% of the bond amount released, and then they move that into their new areas as they move along. So that's going well. Sufco Mine, the Greens Hollow tract, is something that's similar to the Skyline Flat Canyon tract. It's needed. We need to get this done quickly. We've done 1 review, and we're waiting for it to come back in, but we're expecting to get that approved this year and on through the federal process. You may have heard the Emery Deep Mine is under new ownership. They're calling themselves Bronco, and they wanted to change the access to the mine to a new area on the surface. It took some time to get the proper information, but we were able to also send out that approval a couple of weeks ago. And last we heard, they were raring to go, and they were planning to be out constructing last Monday. So I hope that they have been. They were hoping to get things going so that they could start bidding on coal contracts and move forward. And we were, the staff did a great job getting all of these things done quickly and also making sure that it was done right. And that's what is important to us, as a combination of those 2 things, that it's done correctly and done as quickly as we can. This is just a current picture of one of the pits down at Alton. You can see that they operate no matter what the snow looks like, and they're again very successfully operating. We have heard from them that they're expecting some federal acres to be leased soon, hopefully under an emergency lease. And as soon as they hear more about that, they will be handing in yet another permit, and we will be working on that as quickly as we can as well. The Minerals Regulatory Program is similar to the Coal Regulatory Program. 664 permitting actions, 90% on time, and 469 inspections. The biggest project you already saw all the details of, and you were also on the ground last year, and that was the Kennecott East Waste Rock expansion. And they've done a great job with that. They've worked closely with our staff to make sure that all the details were taken care of and that it was done well. Blue Mountain Crushing was one of our bond forfeitures that came before you. We were able to reclaim 10 acres with the forfeited money. I have a couple of pictures of that in a second. American Gilsonite did a great job of consolidating they had several permits that were outdated, and they went in and consolidated those. They replaced all their bonds, and they did a lot of reclamation as well this year. And U.S. Oil Sands is something that people are usually interested in. They are continuing to do site preparation work. They have not done any processing work yet, but they're continuing to work out there. They have not slowed down, and they're still hoping to be producing as soon as possible. So here's a before on that Blue Mountain Crushing, and here's an after picture. This is after they topsoiled and seeded, and it just looks like a nice farmer's field. Hopefully next time we see it, it will have some growth on it and no erosion. But again, that's just a quick update of what we did last year. As you can see, those numbers of things that we worked on were high, and I wasn't able to, we don't have time to talk about 664 things that we did. But I just would like to express my appreciation for the staff that work with me and all that they do. They're very professional, they're very well educated, they're very intelligent, and they do a great job. They're always they're always trying to do the best and keep people operating while still upholding the law and protecting the citizens and the environment of the state of Utah. And a lot of times that's a hard balancing act. When you have to write someone a CO because they're definitely doing something wrong, we try to get them back in operations as quickly as we can. And we try to work with people ahead of time to avoid those types of situations. And I just like to, again, thank my staff and everyone who works with me in the mining program and for all the great work that they do. They're the real stars of the show.
I would mention also that Dana has had to endure the several employees who have left the mining programs. In the coal regulatory program, we had Amanda Daniels leave at the end of last year, and then we're just getting around to replacing her. We should have a new hydrologist in place within the month. And then we got our mining engineer, Cheryl, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Cheryl's last name?
I have to.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm horrible with names nowadays.
Oh, okay.
We have a new
Close
Cheryl, so
enough.
her name is going in my name. In my, what's that? Parker, yes, sorry. Sorry, we have a new Cheryl on board, and her name was coming to mind and not Cheryl's.
okay. But Cheryl resigned, so we're having to replace her. We had a person working in our AML program who had archaeological expertise. She resigned, went to the BLM. So we've got some vacancies we're trying to fill in our mining staff.
Yes, those were great employees. I'm sad to see them leave, but on the other hand, I wouldn't want to hold someone back from an experience that they felt they needed to have or something that they felt was better for their life situation. We do have our new hydrologist will be starting on Monday. She has a great resume and seemed very great in the interviews. We hope that carries forward, and we're working on replacing the other two positions.
Thank you very much. We're on to the next agenda item, Mr. Baza.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, next month you'll be meeting and the legislative session will be over with and decisions will have been made on our budget, so we'll make those reports to you at that time. We have also culminated receipt of our nominations on our Earth Day Awards nominations, and we'll be having a working lunch today where you'll be able to review those nominations and ask questions of staff who have taken a look at that and hear the staff recommendations. But March, we will have our, whoever you invite in to give formal presentations to the board on those nominations will come in. And then in April, we'll have the actual presentation of the awards. Then looking down the road, I think we've scheduled our next out-of-town board meeting and field trip in the May timeframe. So keep that in mind, and we'll give you more information as we move forward.
Thank you very much. For the public, we will be having our work meeting on the nominations at about 12:30 is the plan. The public is invited to attend, but this will be a lunch meeting, so you have to bring your own lunch. But it will be an open meeting. Now is the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on a matter that's within our jurisdiction. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board? Yes, come forward, please, and identify yourself.
Hi, good morning.
Speak real closely to the mic. Just bring it up.
I have a little cold, so I'm a little bit baffled. Terry Marasco, Utah Clean Air Alliance. I sat here 5 years ago and requested that the board contemplate and wrote letters to the board, to the division, published 2 op-eds on the lack of any dollar amount to the Bingham Canyon mine bonding, and nothing has been done on that. My understanding is that the department had been discussing this with Kennecott. There were supposed to be some talks and they fell apart. So here we are 5 years later with no dollar amount on that mine. The liabilities, the potential liabilities into the future are enormous. We're talking about maybe $1.5 to $2 billion. While they are doing reclamation at this time, this does not substantiate the lack of a bonding amount, and that needs to happen. From the public's point of view, from a citizen of the state, from a taxpayer in the state, somebody needs to do their job, and it isn't happening. I don't know how many of you were here 5 years ago. Any of you? You were here. Why isn't this happening? I don't need that answer. I think you need to answer it. The department needs to answer it. And Kennecott needs to answer it. I have better things to do. I'm going to submit this into the record. I've already discussed that with the secretary.
Would you like to
Thank you.
be asked some questions on that?
Sure.
Let me go first. You say that there's over $1 billion liability. Liability from what? Is this to be a litigation?
Well, there are two things. There's the mitigation, reclamation costs into the future. There are documents available and studies available, excuse me, that state the cost of reclamation for a mine in some states as much as $25,000 an acre to as few as, let's say, $2,000 an acre, depending on what's in the soil, what the issues are around that particular mine. You have the largest open pit mine in the world in a city here. So the potential liability of reclaiming, reusing that land into the future is one thing, and the fact that if you have to sue Kennecott in the future to do what they're supposed to do, there is no bond, which I recommended years ago, for litigation, so that they put up a bond for so many millions of dollars in case the board, the department, has to sue them because they haven't done their job.
So if you were king for a day, what is it you would have this board do? And then also, how much would you have it do?
I've had some calculations which are based on studies done around the country that are in a document that she has now, which I've submitted years ago. And it looks like maybe $1.5 billion bond, including some of that, $300 million for litigation, in case into the future the board has to chase them. Whether it's your job, whether it's the department's job, the department has already been talking to them, is my understanding, and Kennecott can correct me if I'm wrong. Those discussions are not going on anymore. Can I be corrected on that?
Okay. Board members, any questions?
Is Kennecott currently breaking any rules or laws as far as reclamation goes or bonding goes?
No, they're not, and that's the point. The point is the state, to protect the citizens of Utah into the future, needs to have a bond on that largest open pit mine in the world.
But there's no current law that requires them to have this bond.
No, there's the point.
But what you're asking us to do is promulgate laws on bonding for Kennecott?
I'm a citizen. The department knows what needs to be done. The board knows what needs to be done. All I'm saying is, around the country, there are many, many bonded mines. Whatever it takes to protect the citizens into the future is what needs to happen. It doesn't matter to me as a taxpayer and a citizen how it happens. It matters that it happens.
Well, I understand your concern. However, without a rule to be imposed or followed by Kennecott, I'm not sure really what this board can do at this time about this. Quite honestly, if that's a concern of yours and enough of the population, then I'm sure new rules can be promulgated and voted upon. But at this time, there's really nothing that we as a board are required to, the action, there's no action for us to take on this right now.
Can you require John Barza to continue the talks with Kennecott to get a bond?
I really can't comment on that because I don't know what the status of those conversations are.
Well, he's here. Can Kennecott make a comment?
I'm not sure that this is the appropriate time for them to be discussing it.
It is the appropriate time, and that's the problem. 5 years ago, I was sitting here.
Well, 5 years.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
This is not acceptable.
We're going to take a break now. I think we'll be back about 5 after 9 o'clock, if that's okay, board members. All right, we are in recess till 5 after. Thank you very much.